Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our third Facebook Live event for the G7 that's coming to Cornwall in June. This week's event is based around the theme of protest, so if you have any questions specific to that theme, now's your time to ask them. I'll introduce myself first. I am Superintendent Jo Hall, and I'm part of the planning team within Devon and Cornwall Police. My role today is to be the chair and help get your questions to our colleagues. So we have some partner agencies with me this evening to hopefully answer all of your questions. And we've got roughly around about 45 minutes to do so. I will introduce you now to our partners before we start the event, and I will work through them. So firstly, I would like to welcome the Cabinet Office, and that is Laura Perry and Joseph Potts. Thanks both. From Cornwall Council, I have the Strategic Director for Neighbourhoods, Sophie Hosking. Hello. Thanks, Sophie. From Public Health, I have Deputy Director of Public Health, Ruth Goldstein.
Good evening, everyone.
Thanks, Ruth. And from the police, we have two officers with us today. We have one of our protest commanders, Chief Superintendent Matt Longman, and we have our lead planner, Chief Inspector Russ Dorr.
Good evening, everyone.
Thanks, both. And on the screen event, you will see Carleen, who is BSL interpreter. And this is to help make this event as accessible as possible. On our Force website, there's a YouTube video which will show the event to somebody who needs it. So as the event this evening, and we would welcome questions. You put those in the comments bar, but could I ask please that you start any questions with the word question and keep them as succinct as you can, keep them on the screen, and hopefully do our best to answer them for you. If there are any questions that can't answer, we will go away, get an answer for you, those onto our website. And that's an opportunity for me to remind you about our website, all which have FAQs and lots of information. So we'd encourage you to have a look at those. What I'd like to do now is take you through our partners who provide you with a briefing, and after that I will take questions. So I'm going to start with the Cabinet Office, and I'd welcome Laura and Joseph, please.
Thank you very much, Jo. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be back with you again to update on plans for the G7 summit, which is now only 6 weeks away. My name is Joseph.
And I'm Laura.
And we're from the central team in the Cabinet Office helping to organise the summit. To give you an update on how all of the G7 talks are progressing so far, global experts on women's rights, health, vaccines and charities have all met recently under the UK's leadership of the G7. And only today, G7 technology ministers met and discussed issues like how to avoid tax avoidance by global digital companies. G7 companies also recently got together to announce new ambitious climate reduction targets, and we'll be using the G7 Cornwall Summit to agree new action on how we meet that global ambition on climate change. And next week, the Foreign Secretary will be welcoming foreign ministers from the G7 countries and our guest countries to London for talks, and we'll be using this to test some of our COVID safety measures ahead of the summit in June. We also had the exciting confirmation from the White House last Friday that President Biden confirmed that he will indeed be travelling to Cornwall for the G7 summit, making Cornwall the first place outside of the USA that President Biden will be visiting since coming to office.
So bringing it back to Cornwall, you may have seen that Cornwall Council have launched a Y7 website, which is full of lots of exciting ways that young people in Cornwall can engage in the summit and that includes a poetry and art competition for young people that's launched. The winner will be chosen by number 10, and the pieces of art will be being shown to the leaders down in Cornwall, so I definitely recommend you get involved in that. We have more announcements to make after the elections have taken place on things like the local companies and suppliers that we'll be using to deliver the summit, and also some legacy investment in nature and environment projects, which would be part of our overall commitment to the summit being carbon neutral. Today, as you've heard, we're going to be focusing on protests, making sure that whilst we uphold our democratic right for people to peacefully express their views, making sure that that's done in a safe and secure way for the community. Thank you very much, and back to you, Jo.
Thanks both, and apologies, we may have some connection issues which we're trying to work through at the moment, so I will carry on and hopefully we can get that resolved. In the meantime, I'd like to invite Cornwall Council Sophie Hoskins to provide you with some information.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you all for joining us this evening. As Jo said, we're now just 6 weeks away from the summit itself, with the final details of our planning being put into place. As we've previously mentioned, the G7 really it's an extraordinary opportunity for Cornwall, and we're honoured to be hosting world leaders here. We're continuing to work closely alongside our colleagues in Devon and Cornwall Police and the Cabinet Office to keep residents as up to date and informed about our plans as we possibly can, and also to play our part in making sure the summit is a resounding success. So, as we've heard, one aspect of the event we need to address is the protests that are likely to be held during the summit itself. We've seen this at previous G7s across Europe, and we must be under no illusion that we may well see the same here in June. It's important to say from the outset that people have a right to have their voices heard, to raise their concerns, and this is absolutely fine, providing it's done in the right way. For example, before the pandemic changed our lives, we saw regular demonstrations held by young people outside County Hall in Truro. These were big, noisy affairs, often with several hundred young people chanting and waving banners, expressing their very real concerns over the climate change emergency. And although the protests took place outside our offices in Truro, they didn't disrupt any council business from taking place. They were also held in a responsible manner and did not affect any of the traffic or the security or any of the well-being of our residents. To ensure this was the case, as a council, we liaised with the organisers, and we arranged for members of our climate change team to meet with them to discuss their concerns and our own plans as an authority to tackle the issue. This allowed those protesting to voice their concerns and to make sure their messages were heard by those people who mattered, and heard they were. My hope is that the same approach can be effective during the G7 summit. We understand and respect people's need to have their say, but it must be done in a safe and legal way without having a detrimental effect on residents and businesses. And finally, on that note, Cornwall Council now has an email address specifically for those planning to protest to contact us for advice and guidance about how it can be done safely, respectfully, and with a minimum impact on those living and working in the affected areas. That email address is g7protest@cornwall.gov.uk, and you can see this scrolling along the bottom of the screen now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophie. And now I'd like to welcome Deputy Director of Public Health, Ruth Goldstein, please.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. Just an update from a public health perspective. We are working alongside all of our colleagues, both within the Council, the Cabinet Office, Public Health England, Department of Health and Social Care, to make sure that the summit can go ahead in a COVID-safe way. The work we're doing is to protect both the delegates who will be attending the conference and all the other workforce that will be coming into Cornwall to support the summit. But also very much with a focus on making sure that the summit poses no additional COVID risks to anybody within Cornwall, whether they are residents or other visitors. So we are offering advice and guidance as to how to do that in the safest possible way. And that also has impacts on any protests that are likely to occur during the G7 summit. We're really happy to offer support and guidance to any protest groups who are planning on formal protests during this time, so that we can give you advice and guidance on how to make those protests as COVID safe as possible. So please do use the G7 protest at cornwall.gov.uk website and ask us the questions, and we will get back with some advice and guidance for you specifically for the protests that you are organising. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And now I'd like to move to one of our protest commanders, Chief Superintendent Matt Longman.
Thanks, Jo. Good evening, everybody. So as Jo just said, my role up till now really has been to try and plan and prepare for how we might manage and work with people who want to come and protest at this event. So I think the first thing I'd like to make clear is, well, I'm not here to stop protest at all. None of us are. I think this is an amazing opportunity in the Southwest, and one that's relatively rare to us, for people to come along and have their voices heard. So what we want to do is work and make sure that can happen safely and peacefully. So people will have seen in the news, there's a lot of resources are going to come down. And the first point I wanted to make to try and, I suppose, help people think about what questions they might want to ask us in the next hour is all of those resources are not sat for me to try and deal with protest or stop protest. There are going to be a whole load of resources in the Southwest to help us manage this as a safe event. What I can reassure people about is that I've thought through lots of plans and contingencies along with all my colleagues, so I can call upon them if we do need them. But if not, they'll be involved in engagement, security at the event. You'll see them performing all sorts of roles. So don't panic if you see lots of people coming. A couple of people have commented already that there's a term facilitating protest and peaceful protest. What we actually mean by it is, as I say, people will turn up to protest. We expect that and they're welcome to. And my job is to try and balance that with, it's almost like spinning a few plates, because I want people to turn up. I want people to be able to have their voices heard on a whole range of issues I anticipate. There's a few things I can't let happen. So first of all, I can't let that interfere with the overall security of a global event. I think most importantly, I've got to look after everybody's safety. And that includes the safety of the protesters and all my staff that are involved in it. But thirdly, there's a really important balance with the impact on the local community. So if we just allow the whole of Cornwall to come up through huge protest, there's a massive impact on the rest of the people living in Cornwall who've already gone through, as most of us have, a really difficult 12 to 18 months. So I know that the key protest groups that are turning up wouldn't want that impact. So again, that's one of the plates I'm spinning to try and allow that to all work whilst allowing people to talk. Final point for me is that we have a role called police liaison teams, and these are staff who work for the police, specially trained to engage with protests of all sizes, whether it's a couple of people making a point between themselves or whether it's a large organisation, by perhaps some of the ones that people are more familiar with in the news. We'll try and engage with all of them and open that as a communication channel to talk about the things that they might want to do. And some people are a bit sceptical about that, wondering why we do it. What I would say is I'd encourage any group who wants to protest to take up that offer, because it's entirely down to the group what they share with us. If they don't want to talk to us and literally just want to give a name or phone number, that's fine. But it's a one way into the organisation to talk through any challenges you have that might allow you to come and protest in whatever way you want. And we're working really closely with our partners, all the key sites that we think people might want to turn up and protest at, which at the moment including Truro, Falmouth, Plymouth and Exeter, and includes any provision on the water. And further details of that are going to come out in the media and on our websites over the next couple of days. So be rest assured we're doing all we can to allow people to turn up and do it, but please do it peacefully. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And I think our signal has just stabilised, so I will push on as much as we can and hopefully it stays that way. So there you have some brief updates from a number of the partners that are working together to deliver this event. So I will open the floor now to questions. Just a reminder, if you could start any questions with the word question, keep them as succinct as you can so they fit on the screen and that it's easy for us to identify them in the chat bar. So let's have a look. What is our first question we've got today? And it's David Redgewell. So David's asking on disabled access to St Ives and Falmouth and access by bus service from first group. So questions on disabled access to St Ives and Falmouth, please, and access by bus service from first group Kerno buses and transport for Cornwall. I wonder if, Sophie, are you able to help us with this one, the bus route issue?
I'm going to have to post the answer to this one on the Facebook pages afterwards, I'm afraid, because I don't have the information to hand. But we will post that up as soon as it's available. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sophie. So I think that might be linked to the traffic management plan and the potential restrictions that we're still working through at the moment. So thank you for that, David. If you watch it on our websites, we will get an answer for you uploaded as soon as we're able to. Steve Tom is asking, how much of the southwest coastal path will be closed and when will closures start and end? Now, Russ, I think you might be able to help us with this. This is a question that we dealt with last time. I don't know whether you can help.
Yeah, absolutely. So the coastal footpath is in line with the road closures. So that information will be shared as they all fall under the same legislation around road closures. We would anticipate, obviously, our secure footprint and our security around the venues. I would anticipate that the coastal path closes at around about the same period. So probably a week before the event would be when I would see the diversion being put in place, in particular around the coast path that dissects Carbis Bay. So I would anticipate that would be closed probably 7 days prior to the event taking place.
Thanks, Russ. And just to confirm, that is linked to the traffic restrictions that I know are being dealt with, and we're hoping to release those when we've got that detail in May. So in the next couple of weeks, we're hoping to have that information. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct.
Lovely. Thank you. Okay. Stacey Thacker, please can you confirm if we can access our homes in Carbis Bay during the summit? I have been informed today that holiday bookings for owners and guests need to be cancelled for the 2 weeks around the G7 from the 4th of June. Please can you confirm so we can all be informed? Now, this might be something that the Cabinet Office can help us with. It's around holiday bookings. Joe and Laura, I don't know whether you can help with this?
Yes, I think. I mean, if you are in a property that's going to be directly affected, then you'll be contacted by the police or ourselves to talk about the impact that will have on you. Any properties that aren't directly affected, so holiday lettings that aren't directly impacted by the security operation, should be able to operate as normal. So all of the hotels, holiday homeowners, etc., throughout most of the sites in Carbis Bay should be able to operate as normal throughout the summit. It's those properties that are sort of directly impacted by the security operation. But if that's the case, then we're getting in touch with you directly, so we'll be able to update you on that.
Thank you both. And I can probably bring Russ in here to help out as well, because this has got some links to the restrictions that Russ is working on. Russ?
Yeah, absolutely. So those premises that are directly affected, as Joseph's highlighted, those that are within the security perimeter, they'll have direct contact from the venue commander and their deputy, and it will be discussed around those properties. Those that sit outside but are bordering on those venues, we're not going to ask you to move out. Certainly not. St Ives is open for business. What I would say is that there will be some accreditation process that takes place. So when you're driving to your homes, be expected that there will be stopped. You may well get stopped and asked to just produce a driving license or a utility bill to show where you live, but certainly won't be asking people to move out of their homes for the G7.
Thank you, Russ. And I know locally within Cornwall, we've got significant level of engagement work ongoing. And when the dates are released and known in May around the road closures and how that impacts on houses and businesses, if you are going to be directly impacted, then you will be contacted and there will be information shared through various channels with the local community. So more information will come on that, as I understand it, Russ.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. So Richard Eccleston is asking, protesters featured strongly in the communications about the G7. Do you have information that there will be protest groups attending that might use violence? So seeing this is protest, I would welcome our protest guest, Matt Longman, in for this one, please.
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. So the answer is no, I don't at the moment. when we talk about intelligence, it's interesting because it can come from lots of different ways. So it might just be the community that's chatting to us. There might be specific intelligence. So at the moment, on all the things that I know, I can't say there's anything specifically that tells me I think some groups with violence are coming to the area. I will, of course, be thinking about what we would do if that is the case. And what I suppose I'd urge any other groups to do is to make sure, I've already heard from some protest groups returning that they are a bit nervous about this because they don't want to be associated with that. And so I go back to my point at the beginning and just really encourage people to have those conversations with our police liaison teams and help us to help you manage that, because most people want to come and do a really worthwhile and peaceful protest. And we want that bit to happen. And I need to focus on stopping the violence bits that are going to put people at risk. So answer to the question is, no, I don't have any specific intelligence around that at all. But what I do have is some thoughts and contingencies and resources available to me to deal with it if it crops up.
Thank you, Matt. But what we would ask as a police organisation is if you do see anything suspicious or if you hear anything suspicious that might provide us with that information or intelligence around unlawful protests or violence protests, or anything that is suspicious in general, we would ask you to report that to us, because it is our communities that help us build that picture and helps Matt Wang with his planning.
Quite right.
So we had a question from Quince Thomas. Will it be possible for locals to get closer access to the event? I am a local documentary filmmaker and do not qualify for regular press accreditation. I would very much like to document the event for history from a local perspective. I'll start here with the Cabinet Office. Are there any opportunities for this type of document maker to have access?
Thank you for that question. We've just closed our formal press accreditation process, but if the person who wrote in would like to get in touch with us at g7media@cabinetoffice.gov.uk, and I'm sure our colleagues can help put that up, G7 Media, we can liaise with you directly. But I think, for all those who are interested in covering the summit, in making videos, etc. about it, because of the COVID restrictions, meaning we're going to have a smaller media presence than usual, we will have more virtual options than I think summits had in the past. So it will feel very accessible, even from home, via a host broadcast service and live feeds of all the key moments. And obviously, there might be opportunities to film kind of around Falmouth, where we'll have the buzz of all the media centre, and just outside of those accreditation zones. But I think there'll be opportunities, so please do feel free to get in touch. But otherwise, as I say, I think there'll be plenty of material that will be made directly available, particularly as we have had to reduce the amount of accreditation that we would normally like to have for an event of this scale.
Thank you, Laura. That's a really helpful opportunity for Quint. Thank you very much. Okay, Henry Simmons is asking, variants causing concern abroad, so why is it not thought to do it over Zoom or Teams? Are the visitors all tested daily? What about staff at Carbis Bay? So if I can head back to start with the Cabinet Office, and then perhaps I can touch with public health. So Joe and Laura, could you help us with this question?
Yeah, absolutely. And on the fact of international meetings taking place over Zoom, you're right, that is certainly something that's happening. The first call that the Prime Minister had with other G7 leaders back in February was done over Zoom. But there is a difference between a Zoom meeting and a face-to-face meeting between world leaders. A lot of the discussions that they have are extremely sensitive. They're secure issues where you can't necessarily trust them to happen over on a digital platform. And also, the real benefit of the G7 summit happening in person is that leaders are staying overnight in close proximity with each other, where they can have open and frank discussions over a number of days and come to those agreements that the world so desperately needs on things like unified action on COVID, on climate change, etc. And it's certainly a position that the other leaders are in agreement with us on, which is why President Biden, for example, is committed to coming over to Cornwall for the summit. On the matter of COVID testing, though, yes, we've been very, very clear with all of the delegations who will be travelling over here that they will be expected to test negative for COVID before they leave for the UK, and there'll be regular testing taking place throughout the summit for everyone that is attending and taking part. So regular testing before they come here and certainly throughout the summit as well.
Thank you both. And can I come to Ruth? Is there anything you want to add from a public health perspective, Ruth?
Yeah, so we've been taking guidance and advice from Public Health England about what will be the best testing regime for different people who are going to be in contact with the G7 summit. And now there is a whole testing programme that has, or is in the process of being agreed, purely for that absolute reason that if we test everybody very regularly during the summit who's got anything to do with it, then we will get very early identification of any positive cases. We can isolate them and then stop any onward transmission. So I can absolutely assure everybody this has been one of our key focuses, that the testing regime, and it is now coming together, and it does feel very comprehensive. So we should be able to pick up with the tests any positive cases very, very quickly.
Thank you, Ruth. And we'll move on to our next question now, which is from Cynthia Hollinsworth. Are you able to clarify in which parts of Cornwall protests will be allowed? Carbis Bay is a very small community with many elderly vulnerable residents. What COVID rules will be in place for the police and for the protesters? Matt, can I bring you in here to start with, please?
Yeah, of course. So I suppose to a degree, if I work backwards, then if the COVID rules for police and protesters will be the national ones. There's no exceptions for the G7 summit. So, none of those are set in stone. We're all watching those unfold as the rest of the world is and the rest of the UK is. So that will govern us, and we'll work within the kind of the boundaries that they put out, I suppose. When it comes to where people can protest, well, the freedom of speech is that people in theory can protest anywhere. What we're looking to do is encourage people to particular sites. And that's what I said I meant by when we were working with our partners, because I suspect there's some key sites we could work on. And we think Truro, Falmouth particularly are areas where people might gather. And so we'll try and understand how we can best facilitate it there. In terms of Carbis itself, I can't stop people going to Carbis, but what we would do is just encourage people to take into account the impact that's going to have on a very small community. So whilst we understand the main event is there, if you've got an organised protest, we would definitely encourage you to get in touch with some of the staff I talked about earlier, some of those police liaison teams, and kind of work with us, because there might be a more suitable site where people can gather in bigger numbers. They're easier to get to, they're easier to park. And make it a better event for people who want to turn up and protest, whilst not allowing Carbis Bay to be too badly disrupted. So I can't specify it, but there's definitely some areas we want to work with.
Thanks, Matt. And just to pick up the part of that question, which is around police officers being tested, Russ, is that something I can bring you in for?
Yeah, absolutely. So police officers are going to be tested. So there's a testing regime that will be put in place, which is likely they'll be tested at their home station, then when they arrive, and regularly tested once down within the footprint of the protest and wider Devon and Cornwall. So there's a testing regime put in place for all of our officers.
Lovely, thank you. And Sophie, could I bring you in here? Is there anything that you can add to help?
Yeah, just to add to what Matthew's saying, really, is we're working to put sites in places that are public accessible through public transport. So Falmouth and Truro are very appropriate sites from that respect, and not forgetting that for those who want to be seen and heard in their protests, Falmouth will have the world's media and the media centre there. So that would be my choice if I was looking to have my voice heard. We would ask that you avoid the Carbis Bay and St Ives area, and hence the official sites being looked at to be set up at Falmouth and Truro, and also in Devon at Exeter and Plymouth, as mentioned by Matthew earlier. And we would absolutely encourage that anyone who wants to be involved in protesting is COVID safe, wears masks, observes social distancing, all of those things that have ensured keeping Cornwall as COVID free as possible, and make it stay that way, please. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll move on to our next question then, which is from Nicholas Sheriff. How many armed police will there be in Cornwall over the course of the event? Russ, can I bring you in for that one, please?
Obviously, as part of the police planning, I'm not going to openly disclose the level of armed assets that will be in and around Devon and Cornwall during the operation. We will see an uplift in armed assets, not always visible, but it is part of the policing plan, and it will be for both the event and for wider Devon and Cornwall. But yeah, there will be an uplift, but I won't go into specific numbers.
Thank you, Russ. What we have released last week is the numbers that we're expecting to come into Devon and Cornwall on mutual aid, and also how many officers and staff we're expecting to be deployed over the weekend. So we have shared that information, but there you've got Russ's confirmation that we won't be sharing specific numbers around certain aspects of our resources. So Julie is asking, will the leaders be going elsewhere apart from Carbis Bay and Tregenna? A walk or drive around St Ives? Also, will all the shops be allowed to stay open? So if we start with the leaders going elsewhere, if I could bring in the Cabinet Office to help us with that one.
Absolutely, it's a great question and something that we are very keen that all of Cornwall gets the excitement and the sort of benefits of the event happening, and that we are able to see leaders in and around Cornwall and other members of the delegation. We're not able to confirm those plans here. There's obviously security implications, but there will be other venues in Cornwall that the leaders are visiting, and I'm sure we'll be able to announce some of that a bit nearer the time. The second part of your question on businesses, there will be some businesses that are required to close during the summit because of their proximity to the official venues, and they will be directly contacted by the organisers. But otherwise, we hope there'll be enormous benefits for businesses in and around, as one of our colleagues said earlier. St Ives will be open for business, Falmouth as well, where all the media will be gathering, using local restaurants and shops and buying gifts to take home with them, I'm sure. So hopefully lots of opportunities for business, but for that small number who will be impacted, you will hear from us directly.
Thank you. So that's answered both parts of those questions. Thank you, Laura. That's helpful. So Cynthia, what is the best way for local residents to report anything they see which is unusual, which could represent a security risk? I'll move to Russ, our lead planner here, if I can, please.
Yeah, absolutely. In the normal manner, if you see suspicious activity, it's 101 into Devon and Cornwall Police, or you can contact us via the website on our internet page. And likewise, if you feel it needs an immediate response and is an emergency, then obviously 999. But I would encourage any reporting initially. If it's not an emergency, you'll need a police response to report it via the website and the web contact.
Thank you, Russ. So let's look at our next question then from Corinda. Will it be checked that protesters have somewhere to stay? This area is always busy in June. Will we expect to see campers everywhere? And I wonder if Sophie, could you help us with this one? It's about where can protesters potentially stay?
Yeah, happy to. So many protesters will making their own arrangements and haven't been in touch. We have been contacted by some groups of protesters who are looking to us to help them find a site. We formed a working group with our colleagues in the police, headed by Rob Andrew, who's head of environment at Cornwall Council. The best thing to do is for protesters to get in touch with us so that we can identify needs together and work out the best solution. We're not so please use the I think we're putting it up, yes, please use the email address g7protest@cornwall.gov.uk, and we can work together to make sure that people are safely, securely and happily accommodated. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Yes, let's move to our next question by Chris. I think I'll rephrase my question. Is anything being done to prevent offshore protests, since which forces would enforce an exclusion zone is probably giving away security protocol arrangements? Matt, is this something that you can help us with?
Possibly. I'm not sure I haven't completely understood the question, if I'm honest. I think it's asking, are we using different forces to help us with the exclusion zone? Is that how you read it, Jay?
I think I read it that, are we expecting protests on the water? I think the exclusion zone might relate to the harbour restrictions that were released last week, which aren't in relation to protest. So perhaps if you can just explain whether or not you're planning for on-water protests.
Right. Okay. So yeah, yes, we are. I mean, when we look at an event like this, what we try and do is look at similar-ish kind of events. Is not really a direct comparison, to be honest, but so a bit of a best guess of what people might want and need to be able to do that protest we've all talked so much about. It's a fair guess, isn't it, in an area like Carbis and Falmouth, that people might want to be on the water. So we're looking around how we can work with that, and again, keep people safe whilst also keeping the security of the event. So we'll use staff from across the UK. Actually, have all sorts of different skills. It won't just be Devon and Cornwall. This will be part of those mutual aid numbers you talked about earlier, who help us get the best expertise there is in dealing with the marine side of things. So I expect there to be some protest. What we're going to try and work on is whether there's an area in and around Falmouth. Again, it's not one of the confirmed sites, but we will do all we can to get a designated area somewhere on the water in Falmouth, so people can take part in a water protest. And then there will also be an application at the minute which has not gone through. So as soon as we've got the details, we'll make them available on our website around any exclusion zones that exist, either in the use of marine areas like the harbour, the slipways, etc. But I think more importantly, any restricted zone around the Carbis Bay site. So obviously people can expect to see some resources in and around that, but it won't be intrusively so. That we're sounding quite pragmatic, that people are going to want to use the water around there. We'll just make it really clear what those restriction zones are and what people can do or not do within them.
Thanks, Matt. So hopefully we've provided an answer for that question, and we can look at our next one from D. Will we be able to access our beaches in St Ives? There will be residents and visitors, but will people be safe on them if protesters may be present? So talking about beach access, first of all, Russ, is that something that you can help us with?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, there will be beach access. The only beach that will be closed as part of the G7 is Carbis Bay Beach, and that's from a security and policing perspective. So that one will be closed. The others, yes, there may be some limited restrictions to certain areas of the beach, but there's certainly no intention to close any other beaches. Obviously, if there's protest, we will, wherever possible, facilitate that protest. And obviously those protests need to be peaceful. So obviously, I hope not impact on the wider communities that are there to enjoy the beach.
Thank you, Russ. So we're moving through the questions. We've probably got about 10 minutes left, so I will get through as many as we can, but just to give you an idea of where we are time-wise. And now Darren Lightfoot is asking what provisions is in place for utility vehicles to get through road closures. Russ, if I can call you back for this one, please.
Yeah, I seem to be getting the majority of questions tonight. So utility vehicles
ride last time, so it's your turn.
So utility vehicles, yes, depending on what they're being utilised for, they will be obviously accredited individuals from recognised companies, and would need to have, if it's an emergency, clearly we would let them through. What I would ask is, if you have things planned, I would ask that you try and avoid those key 4 days, because there is going to be a level of disruption. But obviously, if there's an absolute necessity and it's a booked in visit, then we'll accommodate wherever possible.
Thank you, Russ. And just to add to that answer, we are doing some work locally, working with our partners such as the council, to make sure that we're identifying vulnerable groups that may need particular access or have particular needs. So we have got some work going on to make sure that nobody is forgotten, and that everybody that needs access does get the access that they need while the event is running. Kirsty Arthur is asking, residents of Carbis Bay are worried about how movement will be restricted. Can we leave our houses? Kids will be kept home, but what about work and shopping? What date will we be told? Russ, back to you again, if I can, please.
Yeah, no problem. So around restrictions and movement, we know there's going to be disruption. I think I've said it several times over these meetings. We will facilitate that movement. We're not going to stop anybody leaving their home addresses, going to the shops. There's going to be challenges, but kids need to go to school. Kids, you need to get out and about. We're not there to restrict movement around St Ives. We are there to make the event safe. to make sure the world leaders are safe, to make sure we work with our communities that they're safe and engaged and enjoy the event. So we will, wherever possible, facilitate that movement and allow the residents of St Ives to move around freely.
And just to clarify, Russ, I think it's early May. You're hoping to have those confirmed dates around any restrictions, road closures, or those measures, and then they'll be shared as soon as you've got them?
Yeah, absolutely. The traffic management plan being developed by Stadium Management and the FCDO alongside ourselves, Cornwall Council and the main partners is currently in the consultation process. What we then do is we publicise what those road closures look like and where the restrictions will be put in place. And our aim is to share that early May in order that local residents are aware and you can plan ahead 4 weeks in advance of the event.
Thanks, Russ. Melanie Rawlings is next. Will Longstone Cemetery be protected from protesters wishing to camp there? Sophie, are you able to help us with this one?
So we would not be expecting to see protesters camping in Longstone Cemetery, and we will be working with colleagues in Devon and Cornwall Police to ensure that the land is used appropriately, and that would not be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Okay, so Jew Scott, I get married on Thursday the 10th of June at St Ives Harbour Hotel. Can the wedding car have access to the hotel? Also, the cake, etc., need to be delivered on that morning. Is this going to be an issue? Russ, can I draw you in here first, and then I'll see if anyone else can help with this specific issue?
Yeah, really important day. I wouldn't really want to be disrupting your wedding. So if the hotel is open and you're booked in and your event is planned, there'd be no reason why there would be any issue for you to change it, cancel it, or that not to occur. For your event not to take place. No, there will be policing. There will be policing in place. There will be the road closures, but obviously we will let you know of any issues that could impact. But there'd be no intention for us to impact on that day if the hotel has already planned your wedding.
Thank you, Russ. And I wonder if I can bring in Laura and Joe here from the Cabinet Office.
Nothing really to add to that, but Ju, I know we spoke a couple of weeks back when you were hearing some things at the hotel that we managed to resolve. So I'm glad to hear that your wedding is definitely still going ahead, as we'd said should absolutely be the case. As Ross was saying, yeah, we can certainly work with you to make sure that there isn't any disruption to your happy day.
Thank you both, and congratulations, Ju, and good luck for your big day. Karen Oates, are there plans for protesters to use Hayle Recreation Ground as a place to camp on? Sophie, can you help us with this one?
So I believe that a protester group was in touch with Hayle Town Council about this, and that has not been agreed with the Town Council, and it's not been agreed through us. So no, I don't. There are no plans. There are no in place for that to happen.
Thank you. So I think we've got time for a few more questions, so I'll keep going. Thank you, Mike. What will be the impact of cover for the other towns in Devon and Cornwall for police cover? Councillor Mike Davis. Russ, this is probably one that we can come back to you for if we can.
Yeah, no problem. Part of our planning is we've got a separate command structure that is looking at business as usual. So the aim is, although we're aiming to use as many Devon and Cornwall police officers as possible to be involved in that, that's not to have a significant impact on daily business. We still need to police the communities of Devon and Cornwall alongside running the G7. So that is part of our overall planning, is to ensure that there are sufficient resources to deliver daily business for the residents of Devon and Cornwall.
Thank you, Russ. And Matt, is there anything that you can help with this one?
Yeah, I think just to add, so I probably should have explained at the beginning that the role of the protest commander is a bit police speaky, isn't it? So effectively, what I'm asked to look at is how do we manage those things that might happen all over the Devon and Cornwall footprint? So anything to do with protest or public order. And the point I wanted to make is it's not just It's not just the Carbis Bay thing. It's not even just the Cornwall thing. So my task has been to look at that across the whole of Devon and Cornwall, and therefore I've got resources across it. So some of the large numbers that people have seen reported are going to come down to Devon and Cornwall. They're not all going to Cornwall. They're going to be placed in all the places I need them to get the best use out of them throughout the event. So in answer to the question, Russ is absolutely right. There's a really clear command structure that's going to do all the stuff that we normally do alongside this big event. That's why we go outside of the force to ask for those resources. But in addition, I've got those resources sat around the force, and they will help us in our daily business as well. So in actual fact, far from there being less resources available, I think there'll actually be far more. So it's good news, I think.
Yeah, so if you need the police for anything, the message is get in touch. We're still here. So contact us.
Yeah, don't hesitate. We're here, and it's business as usual.
Thank you, gents. I think if we can do one more question before we wrap up. Or was that the last question? Okay, so that looks like that was the last question. That went quick. So just a reminder then, please keep an eye on all the agencies' websites. We've got plenty of FAQs and information on there. And there's also means for which you can report information or contact us if you need anything specific to yourself. We've had lots of positive feedback in relation to how we as a group of agencies have engaged with the communities that work together so far. And we are committed to continue with doing that. And we will continue with these events as well. So we'll be doing another one in a number of weeks, and we would welcome you to join us. And before we close the event, I'd just like to say thank you to all of our presenters today. So thank you firstly to our Cabinet Office, Laura and Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To our council representative, Sophie Hosking.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
To our public health representative, Ruth Goldstein.
Thank you, and bye.
And to our police representatives, Matt Longman and Russ Dorr.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
And thank you, Carleen, for helping us making this more accessible. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope to see you next time.